Could I get all the candidates to come join us on the stage? Hey, Jane. Good to see you. And the mics, everyone on get the mic.
Did you get the wave?
Okay.
I tried to give you the wave like last time. Okay. Okay.
So remember, put the mic on. Yeah, and then down means you talk, and then you press it again. That has to move. Perfect.
Yeah?
Exactly. And you have it turned on this?
Yep, following instructions as...
Just check. It wasn't that I was questioning, but I just, so just put that there.
Check, check.
Yep, perfect.
Did-
And then down. No.
Check, check. Do you hear me?
Are the mics on back there? Yeah. Try talking.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, there.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Testing.
Hello?
Testing.
Testing.
Is it on?
Is this working all right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's yours is working.
Testing. Testing.
Try going a bit louder.
Testing. Testing.
There you go. Okay. We might need to turn that. We might need to turn that one up. And water bottles. I can take a look. Yeah. Why don't you test yours right now?
Testing.
Try a bit louder.
Mic test.
You turn that one up.
Am I crackling?
Oh, it's not on.
How did you get...
Always helps when you turn it on.
There we go. Talk a bit louder.
How do
talk a
I make
bit louder.
it stay? Oh, here.
Sibilance.
This one. Could you turn this one up as well?
Check. 1, 2. Check.
Keep talking.
Check. Sorry, yeah. I'm supposed to be talking. Imagine that. A politician not talking.
There you go. I think it's there.
Check, check, check. All good?
Okay. Okay.
Check, check.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the All Candidates meeting on housing and homelessness for our coming provincial election. We're really excited to do this. I'm really proud to be partnering with multiple organizations to make this happen today. So we are working today with the United Way of Peterborough District, Trent Research for Social Change Lab, All Saints Church, and ourselves, One City Peterborough. My name is Christian Harvey. I'm the Executive Director of One City Peterborough and one of the organizers of this event. We want to thank so much the candidates who have come today. We have Jen Deck of the NDP. There you go. Adam Hopkins of the Liberal Party. Lucas Graham of the Green Party. And Andrew Roundney of the New Blue Party. It's so important, I think, in these elections to have these times when we can hear the ideas put against each other and engaging with each other. And so we're really grateful for each of you for coming today. Our incumbent, Dave Smith, was not able to make it today, but he sends his regrets. So one thing that I want to say before we start, if you want to ask a question, so the first part of it, and the format will be explained, but if you want to ask a question, one of the things you will have to do is take a ticket. And so if you haven't received a ticket and you'd like to ask a question, go see the great Emma right there, and she will give you a ticket. It will be a random lottery style, so no one's guaranteed to be able to ask a question. We will ask as many questions as we're able to, but we are going to finish sharply at 9 o'clock as we all want to get home before Snowmageddon starts. So, or finishes, whatever. So we want to make sure you get home safe. So again, thank you very much. Our two moderators today are one, Joël Favreau. Joël has, give them a hand. They have been a food justice advocate in the city of Peterborough for many years. I have often referenced them as someone I like to quote and as an inspiration in advocacy. They are here representing Basic Income Peterborough tonight, and Joël will be one of our moderators. 2 rounds of applause, Joël. There you go. The other is Jim Hendry. Jim Hendry, also a legend of Peterborough. Jim is a former editor of the Peterborough Examiner, a former board member of the United Way, board chair, and board, what is it when you run the campaign? Campaign chair. Also, Jim is a recent inductee onto the Peterborough Walk of Fame. So let's give Jim a round of applause. And before we go any further, I'd like to introduce the Reverend Samantha Caravan, pastor here at All Saints Church. Samantha is going to lead us in land acknowledgement. Okay, great.
Thanks for coming this evening. It's great to see so many of you here, braving this snow that's coming. Some of you will have to help me dig my little tiny car out before we leave, but it's great to have you all here. We are standing on the lands of the Michisagi Anishinabeg, which is part of the Rice Lake Purchase and Treaty 20. And the Anglican Church is a co-conspirator in the theft of these lands and the genocide of these peoples. So we acknowledge that, and we work hard, certainly here at All Saints, to try and remedy that. So this is not our land, and we're so grateful for those who have preserved it for us, and we are grateful to be using it. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Elections are important moments in our democratic lives, and candidates' debates provide an opportunity for all of us to learn more and be better informed when we go to vote. And we wanted to start this debate with providing a little bit of a context for the debate, using information from local reports and studies. So, although our city's vacancy rate has recently improved and we no longer have the lowest rate in Ontario, the affordability crisis remains. Homelessness has become more and more visible, with 331 individuals known to be experiencing homelessness as of October of last year, according to the city's by name list. 343 surveys were conducted by United Way Peterborough and District during their point-in-time homelessness count back in November, and the tentative results from this process show that over 80% of those living unhoused in the city of Peterborough access social assistance. Other research conducted by United Way, including the GAP report, and there are copies of the report at the entrance if you want, and housing is fundamental, and there are copies of that one as well, illustrate that social assistance rates are inadequate, especially considering that the increase in rental costs has exceeded even average wage growth by a wide margin. Our region's living wage rate went from $20.60 in 2023 to $21.65 in 2024, which is the second highest increase in Ontario. Whether people are working or accessing social assistance, incomes simply cannot keep up with the cost of housing. Legislation enacted in 2018 changed our province rent controls so that they only apply to rental units created and occupied prior to November 15, 2018. New buildings, additions to existing buildings, and most new basement apartments that are occupied for the first time for residential purposes after November 15, 2018 are not protected by rent control. As a result, individuals and families living in rent-controlled housing often cannot afford to move. And those who have been displaced from their housing for whatever reason are too often faced with a choice between unsustainable rental costs or homelessness. According to the recent report on homelessness from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, there are 80,000 people living unhoused across the province. Think of that. That's comparable to the population of this city. As Paul Armstrong, author of the local Housing is Fundamental report, writes, "The problem has been created. It didn't just happen." And by the same token, the problem can be fixed. We are here tonight to learn about how our local candidates and their parties plan to address the housing and homelessness crisis.
Hello, everyone. As you heard earlier, my name is Jim Hendry. I'm going to give you a little run through on how this will work tonight. There will be 2 different sets of questions. The first 6 have been written prior by the organizing committee, and the candidates have seen them. We'll have 1 bell that will be rung when the candidates have 30 seconds left in their time to talk, which is 2 minutes per question. And there'll be 3 bells you'll hear at the end of time. They have promised us they won't go over time, but it's always difficult. They'll get a little bit of leeway, but not too much. The question and order of the speakers will be on the screen back behind you, up on the high on the wall. There'll be a different order for each question. And in the second part, there will be questions from the community, with each candidate getting 1 minute to answer. Questioners will have 30 seconds to ask their questions. And if you, as Christian said, if you'd like to ask a question, you will have gotten a ticket from the door. You'll have a number. If you don't already have one and you'd like to ask a question, a number, go and get one now. The tickets will be drawn in a lottery system. A number will be going up on the screen, and that'll be the next question. If it's your ticket, come up to the mic here. You get to speak at a very religious-looking little podium, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's what we've got. If a ticket is yours, like I said, go up to the mic, be ready when you're called on, so you'll have some time. When you see your number, you can walk up and stand there, and then you'll be ready to step in when it's your turn to speak. And as I said, the speaking order for the candidates will vary from question to question, be posted on the screen. When you're asking a question, we're expecting people, not too much of you, be polite and let the speakers answer the questions. We don't want anyone interrupting. answers. If you have a supplementary question, Joelle and I will take turns moderating the questions, so we'll work that in as we can. But again, we're time constrained, so don't expect to get a lot of time beyond the question you ask. Do try and keep your question to 30 seconds. I guess that's it. You can be challenging, but be polite. I think that's a good sort of frame for the evening. So, let's go. The numbers are being drawn now, so you'll see those coming up. I think you'll see them now. Well, I guess they're going to be, the questions will be up there, they'll be up later. So the first question, in January 2025, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario released a report showing that homelessness in Ontario was increased by 25% since 2022. That means that at least 80,000 people, approximately the population of the entire city of Peterborough, are experiencing homelessness. What do you understand to be the primary cause for this increase, and what is your party's plan to address this continual rise? And Lucas Graham will answer first.
Hello, can you hear me all right? Sounds like you can. Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to thank the organizers quickly. Jim, Joelle, Alicia, Christian, everyone else who has been key in putting this together. My name is Lucas Graham. I'm the Green Party candidate for the upcoming provincial election. Is this buzzing a bit? Sorry. All right. To the question, homelessness in Ontario has reached a crisis point, and the fact that it has increased by 25% in just 3 years is not a failure of individuals at all. It's a failure of government policy. The primary causes, I think, are clear: skyrocketing housing costs, a severe shortage of affordable homes, and a lack of wraparound supports for mental health and addiction. So instead of treating homelessness as a policing issue, we need to treat it as a housing and healthcare issue. So the Green Party's plan directly tackles these root causes. So first, we're going to implement a housing-first approach, which means that housing is the first priority when helping people experiencing homelessness. We'll immediately support those living in encampments rather than displacing them by providing them with temporary and permanent modular housing on provincial land. This model has worked in cities like Medicine Hat, Alberta, where they functionally ended chronic homelessness by prioritizing permanent housing over shelters. 30 seconds. The Green Party plan also, we plan to build 250,000 affordable nonprofit and co-op homes and 60,000 permanent supportive housing units, ensuring that those experiencing homelessness have access to stable long-term housing with mental health and addiction services attached. So homelessness is not inevitable. It is the result of decades of bad housing policy, and the Green Party will take bold action to ensure that everyone in Ontario has a safe and stable place to call home.
Oh, it's me. This doesn't fit on my head, so I'm going to have to use it like a mic. I'm going to use a little bit of my time to say thank you very much to the organizers for organizing this, and thank you to such an amazing crowd of caring people who are out here tonight. The primary cause of this dramatic increase in homelessness is clear. Consecutive Conservative and Liberal governments have dismantled and neglected our social safety net. They allowed housing to be treated like a stock market, and housing prices have skyrocketed as a result. The Ford government cut funding for community housing by 70%. ODSP and OW rates have largely remained the same since they were established in the late 90s, through both Liberal and Conservative governments. Liberals spent over a decade in power, and they refused to address major contributors to the problem. They refused to put vacancy controls in place, which I will talk about a little later, letting landlords push people out of their homes in order to double rent. The PCs cut mental health and addiction supports, and now they're trying to police their way out of the problem. We've always had the money to adequately fund supports for housing and homelessness, but we haven't had leaders willing to make it a priority. If Doug Ford can find $1.4 billion to expand beer sales, $3 billion for election bribe checks, and $50 billion for a tunnel under the 401, they can find money to house everyone in our communities. We need to treat housing as a human right, not a commodity. I ran out of time. I had more to say, but I ran out of time.
All right. Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. So, Kula Malsi, Akatak Indigenous, Ailanape Lakawit and Donjaba, Williams Treaty and Donji. My name is Adam Hopkins. I'm the provincial Liberal candidate for this riding. I am originally from southwestern Ontario, a community named Moraviantown, but I've been here since 2003. And my partner and my family live here with me in Warsaw as well. So I just want to acknowledge the folks up on the stage. This is our second debate today. It's not as scary as I thought. Lots of people I knew out in the crowd, so that made it easy, and some really good conversations this morning at the Cogeco debate. So a couple of things I wanted to add to this discussion. So first of all, we recognize that safe and appropriate housing is a right for all of us. Part of the reason that we've ended up here is because, rent controls were removed when the Progressive Conservative government took over. This has to be changed. We have a phased-in plan to bring rent controls back in place, but that's one element of a massive problem that needs to be addressed. We also know that folks who are experiencing homelessness are there because of intersectional problems. So I'm not going to get into the details here, but our healthcare system is in crisis. This contributes to that, and we also have a plan to fix some of those gaps that we're seeing in the healthcare system to assist those who are experiencing homelessness. Miigwech.
I guess it's my turn then. My name is Andrew Rodney. I'm running for, the New Blue Party, which lots of people have never heard of. So you can ask me a bunch of questions afterwards. I'll be hanging around and we can talk. The people who work on this issue are obviously very dedicated to it because it's so important. And I want to respect your dedication to it by telling you the truth. Government is never, ever going to solve this problem. That's never going to happen. I think we have fairly good historical evidence from the PCs, from the Liberals, from essentially any government that's ever governed Ontario. They've never made any significant dent in homelessness through legislation or even funding. What we need to do is realize that everybody in this province is so burdened by taxes that we have these things happening now that in what was once an industrial superpower, people are living in tents and they're going to food banks, and that is unacceptable. And we can't keep doing the same thing every time. We can't keep looking to government and say, fix this for us, because they never do it. If elected, I'm not going to promise that I'm going to do it, certainly not in the way that the other candidates describe. What we need to do is make everything in Ontario much more affordable, and we do that by realizing we pay a 75% tax rate, and that needs to change, or this kind of thing is going to continue. I have a lot more detail on that that you can either ask me about later, or I've got a couple of YouTube videos up. And it's a hard thing to hear because it's not an easy solution. It's not a this will happen next year solution, but I believe that it's the only real one for this issue, which is really very important.
Thank you. So our second prepared question is the following. Affordability is a major factor in the rise of homelessness and food insecurity in our community. The disparity between Ontario social assistance rates and cost of living has grown. In today's dollars, the value of a social assistance check has actually gone down considerably. What is your party's plan to address the inadequacy of the social assistance system? And this time, we're going to start with you, Andrew, and then we'll have Lucas, Jen, and Adam.
So I get to keep going, I guess. It's hard to know what to start with. Inflation is doing terrible things to the value of the dollar, which means by the time any number is agreed upon for social assistance, before any check is drafted and gets delivered, it's already worth less than when it started out. And social assistance is always inadequate. When has it ever been adequate? When do we remember a time where we all got together and said social assistance is working great? It doesn't. It doesn't work because the problem is pervasive. The problem is the price of everything. The problem is and I hate to sound like a broken record, but the problem is we're being taxed to death. And I don't mean to be glib, but obviously for some people that's not just a metaphor. So that's what we really need to realize. We need to realize what's going on in this province and how our government is treating us, and we need to change how we think about it, because we can send as many people as we want to Parliament, and as we've seen recently, they're not going to do anything about it. What we need to do is realize where we're at, and we need to understand that the taxes we're paying, we used to think it's a kindness. We used to think we're doing this so that we can be kind to people who need our help, and I think we're realizing now that this is not a kindness. It's really hurting everyone, so I think we're going to have to change course on how we feel about taxation itself, unfortunately.
All right, so right now, Ontario's social assistance rates are so low that they are actively keeping people in poverty instead of helping them escape it. Ontario Works provides just $733 per month, and the Ontario Disability Support Program offers only $1,308 per month, far below the cost of rent, let alone food and other essentials. And in real dollars, these rates have fallen dramatically, making it impossible for recipients to afford a basic standard of living. The Green Party has a clear plan to fix this crisis. First, we will double Ontario Works and ODSP rates as a precursor or a first step to moving towards a full basic income, so that no one relying on social assistance is forced into homelessness or food insecurity. People should not have to choose between paying rent and eating, and I don't think that's a radical thing to say. Second, we will end the clawbacks on earnings for OW and ODSP recipients so people can work without being punished for trying to improve their financial situation. Right now, a person on ODSP loses 75 cents for every dollar they earn over $1,000 per month, which discourages them from working. We need to support people, not trap them in poverty. And third, we will push for a basic income guarantee, a proven model that ensures no one falls below a livable income level. In the Ontario Basic Income Pilot, participants had better health outcomes, higher employment, and greater stability. I could go on. There's lots of positives, but the Ford government scrapped it. We know basic income works. There's international justifications and examples, and we will fight to bring it back. So let's be clear, poverty is a policy choice. The Green Party chooses to end it by raising social assistance rates, removing barriers to work, and implementing basic income to give everyone dignity.
Let's talk about what's really happening with social assistance. Very loud, very loud. Yeah? Maybe I'll hold it here. Let's talk about what's really happening with social assistance in Ontario. Right now, someone on Ontario Works gets about $700 a month, a little bit more. An average one-bedroom apartment in Peterborough costs about $1,000 more than that. So before we even start considering any other living costs, we're already in trouble. The current ODSP and OW model, can I have a little bit more time? Yeah. Oh, that's somebody's phone. Turn off your phones. The current ODSB and OW model is designed to keep people in poverty. And instead of fixing that, we have a premier mocking people for being on social assistance. Did you hear this the other day? He made fun of people for being on a social assistance, saying that they're sitting at home watching the Flintstones. A ridiculous reference and also untrue. He's wrong and his comments are cruel. The truth is that people on assistance are struggling just to survive. When I was 21 years old, I lived on social assistance, probably at the same rates that are in place now. I was pregnant, I couldn't get a job, my partner and I were struggling. It was hard to live on social assistance then, let alone 30 years later. And I've run out of time again. But the NDP has a fix. We want to double ODSP and OW rates, a long overdue correction. We need to work with the federal government to increase housing benefits so people can afford their rent. We need to build 300 new affordable homes that people can actually afford, with rent set at no more than 30% of their income. We need to bring back rent control to stop landlords from gouging tenants. And we need to make sure that provinces, not cities, pay for housing and homelessness programs.
All right, well, you can't all see it, but the persons ringing the bell are getting a lot of joy out of ringing that bell. That's a big, big smile, so I'm loving seeing that. So I grew up on a First Nation, and my folks, although we're good providers, good supporters, we grew up on social assistance as well for the majority of my life. We too struggled. We relied on our community to provide the supports that we needed to have a life that we could live in dignity. But that's not fair. It is a provincial responsibility to ensure that we have, those who need it, have the means and resources to live life in dignity. So we were the first to propose doubling the ODSP rates. A couple of folks have mentioned the OW rates are not adequate as well. We haven't made that commitment, but that's obviously something we'll have to look at in addition. I'll be honest and frank with folks here. There's more work that needs to be done with our platform as well, but I make the commitment to listen to those with lived experience, not just across the province, but folks that are in the community, folks that are doing the work, and folks that are in these social service organizations in this community. So, miigwech.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you all. Third question now, but before we get to the third question, I missed something in my introduction, so I'm going to put it in now. Anyone out there watching online, if you'd like to ask a question, you're on YouTube. There's a YouTube comments box on the page.
15 seconds.
Go to YouTube comments, type in your question, and
You're loving that,
it will appear here. So, question 3. The cost of housing has increased by 5% a year in the past few years. This has resulted in encampments as the only option for many people. So far, the main response has been using the law and removing encampments. How is your party planning to address encampments? And we'll start with Adam, then Lucas, Andrew, and Jen.
So I am just trying to get to my binder here. So we just had a debate where our binders were banned, and this time I brought too much information, so I'm just going to go from memory here. So the first thing I wanted to address is that folks who are living in encampments should not be punished. This legislation to force the enclosures of encampments is wrong, and it's not acceptable. So I guess there would be a couple of things I would add here very quickly. So one of the things that would be a primary part of our policy is the phased-in rent control. We believe that that was a major mistake on the fact of or the progressive conservatives coming into power and getting us to this point of getting to this point. Is it me? Okay, can you hear me? Okay. So this would be one element of addressing this problem of folks living in encampments, returning back to rent control, making housing more affordable, building more homes, and I think I'll leave it there. Thank you. There's that bell. Miigwech.
All right, yeah, so, question 3, eh? First of all, let's be clear. Tearing down encampments does nothing to solve homelessness. It just pushes people who are already, who have nothing, farther into crisis. The current approach of using police and forced evictions does nothing to address the root causes of homelessness either, which is a lack of affordable housing and proper supports, mental health, addiction supports for those who need them. The Green Party, as I touched on earlier, will take a housing-first approach, which means getting people into permanent, stable housing instead of criminalizing poverty. We're going to immediately provide housing and supports for those living in encampments by deploying temporary and permanent modular housing on provincial land instead of just moving people from place to place. If you're familiar with PATH, I know some people are very familiar with PATH here. It's kind of that concept, but you know, with government support instead of the opposite. We're going to build 250,000 new affordable nonprofit and co-op homes, plus 60,000 permanent supportive housing units with mental health and addiction services attached and guaranteed, so people don't just get housing, but the help they need to stay housed. And we're going to fund wraparound services like harm reduction, mental health care, and job training because housing alone isn't enough. We need to address the reasons people are ending up in encampments in the first place. We know this approach works. In Medicine Hat, Alberta, as one nearby example, a housing-first model reduced homelessness by 75%. We can do the same here if we treat housing as a human right instead of a privilege for people who have money. So, no one chooses to live in an encampment. They're a symptom of a broken system, and the Green Party plans will end this cycle by providing real, stable housing and supports.
This is everybody can still hear me okay? This is a question that I find hard to give a canned answer to because you can imagine the point of view of someone who has a house, lives right beside an encampment. That person obviously doesn't want to deal with the things that happen in those encampments, and they shouldn't have to. On the other hand, there are people in one of the richest, most industrialized places in the world living in tents. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know where I land on the issue of evicting people from encampments. Because on the one hand, what they are doing is against the law. You cannot just live out in a public place. But they're clearly not there because they want to be. They're clearly there because they have no other choice. And so it's probably an issue that I would like to talk to many of you about a little more, because I think I need a little more detail. I would have thought that the shelter system would help them if their problem was temporary, but obviously this is persistent. So I think it's an issue before I really have a tight political canned answer on it. I probably want to talk to more people about it because I can't square what my answer would be. And it's my first time running for political office, so I'm learning a lot as I go. And so I hope I get to learn a bit about it tonight as well.
Using law enforcement to remove encampments isn't just ineffective, it's inhumane, and it fails to address the root causes of the crisis. The reality is that encampments are a direct result of failed housing policies. The Ford government has cut funding for community housing by 70%, and the Liberals before them repeatedly refused to fund desperately needed repairs of existing social housing. The NDP has a comprehensive plan to address this crisis. First, we'll adopt the successful Housing First model that has worked in jurisdictions like Finland. This means ensuring that people living in encampments can transition directly into safe, secure, and permanent homes. We'll create at least 60,000 supportive housing units with integrated mental health care, addiction treatment, and other essential supports. Any one of those elements cannot work on their own, but put together, and if we also add in things like available health care, affordable food, and a number of other issues, those all can work synergistically. We'll establish Homes Ontario to double the supply of permanently affordable housing through funding, low-cost financing, and providing public land for nonprofit and co-op housing providers. And critically, we'll upload the financial responsibility for housing and homelessness programs back to the provincial government where it belongs, instead of leaving cash-strapped municipalities to handle this crisis alone. The numbers are clear. Over 80,000 Ontarians experienced homelessness in 2024, a 25% increase since 2022. This crisis demands real solutions, not just enforcement. The NDP commits to ending chronic homelessness by 2030 through proven housing-first approaches that treat housing as a human right, not a commodity.
So here's our fourth question. In response to the sharp rise in homelessness, the focus locally and provincially has been to open up more shelter spaces. Though meeting the immediate needs of individuals is important, emergency shelter spaces are not a permanent solution to a housing affordability crisis. How would you balance the need for emergency services with a plan to prevent and end homelessness in the province? So this time we'll start with Jen, then Adam, Andrew, and Lucas.
Hello, hello. There we go. While emergency shelters are necessary right now, we need to be honest. They're a Band-Aid solution to a crisis that demands comprehensive action. According to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, over 80,000 Ontarians experienced homelessness in 2024, a 25% increase since 2 years ago. We can't shelter our way out of this crisis. The NDP has a clear plan to balance the immediate needs with long-term solutions. For immediate relief, we'll work with municipalities to ensure adequate emergency shelter funding. We'll also bring in a grocery rebate so that people can purchase food without spending all their money. But unlike the current government, we won't stop there. We're committed to ending chronic homelessness by 2030 through proven solutions, creating the 60,000 supportive housing units with the integrated healthcare, addiction treatment, and other essential supports. These are pathways to stability. Second, through Homes Ontario, we'll build or acquire 300,000 new affordable homes within 10 years. This isn't speculative development. These will be permanently affordable homes built by public, nonprofit, and co-op housing providers. Third, we'll upload housing and homelessness programs back to the province. Municipalities are struggling to find both emergency services and long-term solutions, and they shouldn't have to choose. The Ford government has cut community housing by 70%. The Liberals before them let social housing crumble. We need a government willing to make the investments necessary to solve this crisis, not just manage it.
Can you hear me back there? Okay. So, obviously, I think all of us on this stage would agree that the goal should not be to have emergency spaces available for folks who are experiencing homelessness. So I think that needs to be balanced. And one of the things that I think of is the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan that was created in 2020. So this plan was a mandate by the current government for every municipality to get together, bring
All right, there we go. Okay. So obviously the goal should be to not need or use emergency shelters. One of the things that I've been reviewing in my work to get better acquainted with what needs to be done to address homelessness and folks experiencing homelessness, came across the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So this was a mandate and a project by the provincial government, the current provincial government, to have every municipality get together, bring together service providers, emergency services, and decide what should be the process to make the services more effective, to make them more efficient, and to ensure that ultimately they're funded well enough to address all of these folks who are experiencing homelessness, addiction. That's basically been shelved, and that's on the shoulders of this current provincial government. So I like to think of it as low-hanging fruit. It's a piece of what we'll need to be doing to ensure that there's not a need for emergency shelters, but it is just a piece of that. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Thanks for the extra 20 seconds there.
Yeah, again, emergency shelters need to be temporary, obviously. No one can, and I've heard some stories through a church that I was going to, that the shelters are sometimes worse than not having any shelter at all, and people don't want to go there, and certainly they don't want to live there permanently. It's worth noting that if we're talking about the entire issue and encampments, how much worse it got in 2022. I think the previous question, or the first question, was that homelessness became 25% worse from 2022 after the largest government intervention against the people of Ontario, probably in the province's history. Businesses were shut down, people were put out of their jobs, and we saw the encampments escalate, obviously, and we're seeing those problems get worse because when government tries to do good, they almost always fail. They almost always make the situation worse for everyone. And as a short-term solution, I suppose shelter spaces would be useful for people who just need a little bit of time to get something together and get out of it. But increasingly, we're seeing people who can't find jobs, who can't get the income together because everything is so expensive, and government's not going to fix that unless we go from the tax system we have to something very different, where people at every level get to hang on to their money and use it to better their lives, to run their own lives. That's not an answer that maybe many people are willing to hear, but I respect you enough to tell you the truth as I see it.
Yeah, so emergency Emergency shelters undoubtedly serve a very important role, but they are not a long-term solution. They were never designed to be a long-term solution to homelessness. The problem is that we keep adding more shelter beds because it's a very definite thing that people can see the numbers going up, instead of fixing the reason that people end up in shelters in the first place, which is a severe lack of affordable housing and proper supports. The Green Party will take a balanced approach that meets immediate needs while investing in permanent solutions, expand emergency shelter funding so no one is left in the cold, but we're not just going to stop there. We will ensure every shelter has direct pathways to permanent housing and support services, because shelters should be more of a stepping stone instead of an end destination. We would also, I think I mentioned these numbers before, but build 250,000 affordable nonprofit and co-op homes and 60,000 permanent supportive housing units so people have a real alternative to shelters as they move along their journey and struggle with homelessness. So without enough permanent housing, shelters just become overflow spaces for a broken system, and that's not, that shouldn't be the end of it there. We're also going to fully fund wraparound services, including mental health care, addiction treatment, and job training, so people don't just get housed, but stay housed. Right now, shelters are overwhelmed because people cycle in and out without proper support. And this approach has worked in other countries and other provinces. I think Jen mentioned Finland. They had their housing first model, which cut homelessness by 80% because they treated housing as the solution, not just emergency shelters. So we need to stop treating homelessness as something to manage and start ending it with real solutions.
Thank you all. We need to move to question 5 now. The increasing cost of housing in Ontario has meant that many people have been priced out of the rental market and home ownership. We need new strategies for protecting housing from the private market. What will you do to ensure there is sufficient affordable housing, meaning housing that costs 30% or less of a person's income, to address the needs of low-income members of our community? And we'll start with Andrew, then Jen, Adam, and Lucas.
Was there a time in Ontario when we could all say that housing was affordable? Was there? When was that?
30 years ago.
How much involvement did government have with that? Is that right? 30 years ago, taxes were a lot lower and jobs were a lot easier to get. So I'm looking at that long view as well. From the time I've been politically aware, I've never seen the economic situation, and this is part of the economic situation. Homelessness is part of the economic situation. There's no way to separate the private real estate market from the problem of homelessness. You cannot separate them. We keep doing the same thing. We keep thinking if we pay more into a system that it's gonna be fixed on the other end, but it never works. We've been doing this, well, certainly longer than I remember, and how long is long enough? Are we gonna keep going for the same solution, or are we gonna realize that what we're doing is not a kindness? The way that we're giving our whole lives and almost our whole purpose to government, instead of putting the power in our hands, it's not working. We're here now, and we have people living in tents, and it's because we've taken the wrong approach for a very long time. And I just can't see suggesting the same thing again when we've already arrived at a place where we know it doesn't work.
The private market has failed to deliver housing that people can actually afford. When Scotiabank tells us Ontario needs more than double its supply of non-market housing, and the Ford government responds by cutting community housing funding by 70%, we can see the real discrepancy. The NDP has a bold solution called Homes Ontario, and here's how it works. We'll double the supply of permanently affordable housing by providing 3 key things: funding, low-cost financing, and public land for nonprofit and co-op housing providers. This isn't just another market-based solution, it's about creating housing that stays affordable forever. Our target is 300,000 new affordable homes within 10 years, with rents capped at 30% of income. This will create good union jobs while building the homes people need. We'll pay for this through an investment of about $2.8 billion a year, a fraction of what we're losing to the housing crisis. We'll also fix the rules that keep affordable housing out of neighborhoods. We'll legalize fourplexes and allow more homes near transit stations. Unlike Doug Ford, we believe every neighborhood should be open to families of all income levels. And we'll bring back real rent control, not just on some units, but on all of them. No more loopholes that let landlords drive up rents when tenants leave. No more rent evictions. No more using housing as a speculative investment when families struggle to keep a roof over their heads. This isn't radical. It's returning to the kind of policies that built stable, affordable communities in the past. And we can do this again.
Thank you. So we've got multiple parts of the plan to, our plan for the Ontario Liberal Party to build more homes and to make homes more affordable for people who need them. So the first thing that we'll be doing is eliminating the land transfer tax, which is meant for first-time home buyers, for seniors, for those who are downsizing, and for nonprofit homeowners. That'll save on average $18,000 per transfer. We'll also propose scrapping the development charges on new housing. Development charges can add as much as $170,000 per home when they're being built. To replace that income that would otherwise be going into municipalities, we're proposing what we're calling a Better Communities Fund. This will allow municipalities the flexibility to address their focus on what they would like to do to address folks who need more homes and the homes that they want to build in the particular municipality. In addition to that, for the rental market, we're going to build more co-ops and rental apartments, and we'll primarily do this by removing punitive and discriminatory extra taxes that increase costs and that drive up rents and other charges. We'll also, as I've mentioned before, introduce fair, phased-in rent controls. We'll also propose giving the resources that the Landlord-Tenant Board needs to resolve any disputes within 2 months. Currently, some disputes have been in the system for a year or a year and a half. And finally, we'll create the Rental Emergency Support for Tenants Fund. It's a provincial rent bank to provide short-term interest-free loans for vulnerable tenants facing financial emergencies, which will prevent evictions and homelessness. Thank you.
I'm very familiar with compassion fatigue. I think if you speak to any public school teacher, they are experiencing compassion fatigue. If you speak to any healthcare provider, they are experiencing compassion fatigue. If you speak to any librarian, they are experiencing compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue is when you are doing your best and you know that you cannot make a difference, you cannot solve a problem. The way to rebuild compassion is to bring back compassion, to alleviate compassion fatigue, is through real solutions that work for people. So let's be specific. First, we're committed to ending chronic homelessness. Oh, sorry.
We'll just finish the question with Lucas, and then we'll go to the compassion question.
I'm so sorry. I got distracted.
Okay.
I lost track. My apologies. I'm so keen.
Such a good start, too.
I'm such a good...
Is my mic? Oh, there it goes. Yeah. Thank you. No, all good. Yeah. No, excitement is a good thing. Yeah. No, I'll try to wrap up here quickly. I think a lot of the points have been touched on by some of my fellow candidates here. I'll start out with a statement. Housing is a basic human right, and it's not an investment opportunity for the wealthy. So right now, unfortunately, too much of Ontario's housing is being bought up by corporate investors, turned into short-term rentals or flipped for profit, pricing everyday people out of both home ownership and the rental market. The Green Party is proposing a clear multi-pronged plan to protect and expand affordable housing so that people will pay no more than 30% of their income on rent or a mortgage. So we're going to give nonprofits the first right to buy rental buildings before corporate landlords can snap them up, keeping more housing in the hands of the community instead of investors. We'll implement a province-wide multiple property speculation tax starting at 25% on the third home and increasing with every additional property owned. And this will curb investment-driven housing inflation and stop corporate landlords from outbidding families who just want a place to live. We're also going to reinstate and strengthen rent control, including vacancy control, so landlords can't exploit loopholes to jack up rent when tenants leave. Ontario's housing crisis is the result of decades of bad policy, where homes were treated as assets rather than places to live, and the Green Party will put housing back in the hands of people, not speculators, so that no one has to spend more than 30% of their income just to have a roof over their head.
Thank you. So here's our last prepared question. As the impact of the homelessness and drug poisoning crisis hits all of us in deeper ways, it is easy to feel what some have described as compassion fatigue. Recognizing that we all have concern for our neighbors, these crises have worn us down. How will you lead us in a way that unifies our community while meeting everyone's basic needs? And we'll start with you, Lucas, then Andrew, Jen, and Adam.
Worry? I'm just joking. Yeah, I understand why people feel exhausted. There's homelessness, addiction, and the drug poisoning crisis. They're not just statistics. They are human tragedies playing out on our streets, in our communities, and in the lives of people we actually know. When we see these crises grow worse year after year, despite all the promises from politicians, it's easy to feel hopeless. There's a lot of hopeless news in the media right now, but we can't afford to give up because behind every statistic is a person who deserves dignity, deserves support, and a chance to rebuild their life. So the Green Party believes that a strong community is one where no one is left behind. And here's how we will lead with solutions that bring people together rather than divide us. So I'm going to just reiterate again the housing first approach because housing is the foundation for stability. When people have a home, they are far more likely to recover, to find employment, and reconnect with their community. We will build 250,000 affordable homes and the 60,000 supportive housing units so no one is forced to live on the streets. And we're going to also treat addiction as a health issue and not a crime. That means expanding harm reduction programs, safe supply, and treatment options so people can get the care they need instead of being punished for their suffering. This crisis won't be solved by policing, it will be solved by healthcare and compassion and connection. I encountered a quote, I'm not sure where it came from really right now, but it's that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it is connection. So, we are also going to invest in mental health services, community outreach, and crisis response teams so that when someone is in distress, they are met with support, not judgment. This is about more than just policy, it's about building a province where we can take care of each other.
I think Ms. Deck made a very good point that what we're calling compassion fatigue can come when you have a problem that's important but so big that you feel that you can't make a difference in it. And there's for somebody with my background, I have that same feeling about watching a society sort of sink under government control. Because I come from communism, I know all about what happens when governments tell you they can provide for all your needs and they can solve all your problems. And the nightmare that ensues is something we're just beginning to see the start of now. And each person here who wants to solve this problem is probably feeling very much the same that I am, looking at the problem that doesn't have to exist, that exists because we keep falling for the same thing every time. And as soon as we change that, as soon as we begin to think differently and act differently, we will move in the right direction, and we will be able to do things for ourselves. The people who care about this issue the most will be able to use their own initiative and their own, quite frankly, money that they raised from people who've got some money, because we will have some. They will be able to solve these problems, and to boot, the problems won't be nearly as big as they are now. I suppose that's what I can say about the fatigue that comes from trying to solve a problem like this.
My apologies to the organizers. I'm having a hard time reading the words on the screen, so I was kind of going by vibe, which apparently is not the way to go. So I didn't actually have that opening written down, so I can't repeat it, but you already heard it. I have worked really closely with students who attend the Peterborough Alternative and Continuing Education School, also known as PACE. And I've also had the opportunity to work at the School for Young Mums. And so, and that's given me a real intimate and deep view into the lives of people who are living on the edges and are doing their best to find success in their lives. And where compassion fatigue comes in is when you can see that they are trying as hard as they can, and you are trying as hard as you can, and there are just simply structural barriers and impediments in the way of being successful. If you get a job, but you can't find childcare, how do you go to that job? If you don't have a car, or if your car is such a POS that it's going to break down and you're going to miss your shift and get fired, you don't have a job. If there are so many barriers. If you have a disability that prevents you from moving through the snowy roads and sidewalks, you can't have a job. You are at risk. And these are the kinds of problems that are nobody's fault, except that as a community, we have a responsibility to take care of each other. And we will be able to alleviate compassion fatigue when the caring people who are trying their best can actually access supports and help, and people who need the supports can access those supports. And that's, I think, what we're trying to get to.
So, in my role that I do right now, working in an Indigenous institute, I oversee the development and delivery of a couple of nursing programs, and we like to call them helper programs, so personal nursing, personal support worker. We have funding for these programs that include a stipend for practicum, that include the tuition fully covered. We cannot fill these programs. We can't fill them because folks that are going into these roles, into hospitals, into support roles in the agencies that many of you represent, these people are not being well supported financially. Many reasons for that, but they also burn out very quickly. And people know that, and people are not coming into these roles like at the rate that we would like to see them. Again, I'll go back to this community safety and well-being plan. I really think that the province has a responsibility to finish what they started. The plan is solid. I think many of the folks that are in this room, service providers, frontline workers, contributed to that plan. It's a plan that can move us forward collectively, collaboratively. It just needs a bit of resources, needs a bit of leadership from the province. As I've been going out speaking with some of the service providers in this community, I've been really heartened to not hear folks talk about mental health and well-being. We're talking about wellness. And I'm loving hearing that because that really speaks to the whole human being. And I think there are many progressive organizations in here that are thinking about, and should the individual want it, the space provided so that they can become more whole human beings. And I'm seeing that thought about as a framework and as a direction for many of the service providers in this area, and I'm very happy to see that. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks to all of the candidates and to all of you. That went very smoothly and was informative. We're now going to move to the community questions section. If you look up on the screen at the back, you'll see the drawn ticket numbers. So if you have that ticket, be prepared to ask your question. We're going to be switching candidates' responses again, and they will have 1 minute per question this time. We'll be alternating between online and in the room, and we're going to start with online. If your question has already been asked, if your ticket is up there and when it gets to you, your question has already been asked, then please just say so and someone else will get to ask their question. There's no point in having us duplicate questions. Be brief, please. They only have a minute to answer you, so keep your question to 30 seconds. If you get any longer than that, there's no possible way they can answer it in a minute. As I said, the number of the next question will be on the screen. So again, if you look up there, the next question from you people in the audience will be from 3957658. We ask that you, again, just be polite, nothing discriminatory, personal, abusive in any way. Questions have to be related to homelessness. That's why we're here tonight. It's a forum on homelessness. And they're not to be directed to just one candidate. You can say, I'd like to ask Adam this, but everyone is going to get to answer the question. The online questions, as we've said, they've been compiled by Alicia over here. If you are watching and you might hear your question being asked in a slightly different format or wording, undoubtedly there will be a number of questions that will be similar, and Alicia has sometimes compiled a number of questions into a single question. So don't be surprised if you hear something very close to yours, but it's not exactly it. And with that, we will start. So it's going to be community question number 1, and Joelle will take over there.
So the first question coming from our online viewers, there doesn't seem to be a particular speaker, so the question is for all of you. How do you plan to support Indigenous people who have been displaced and unhoused through colonization? Do you want me to repeat it? How do you plan to support Indigenous people who have been displaced and unhoused through colonization? So the speaking order for this is Jen, then Adam, Andrew, and Lucas.
If I'm honest, I really want Adam to go first, but I think that with all issues, we have to speak to the people who are being affected. They are the experts, so we have to speak to Indigenous people who are displaced. We need to speak to elders who understand the Indigenous experience best, and we have to be cognizant of the fact that indigeneity is one of many intersectional identities that any one person has, and that we have to be sensitive to who we are working with. Thank you.
Could you read the question again? It was displaced? Oh, okay. So I guess it depends on the time frame. Are we talking about now? Are we talking about generations of people? Are we talking about 50 years ago? What my response would be to the time now is that there are many services in place that are specifically for Indigenous people. There is the Ontario Aboriginal Housing Organization. Most large cities have a friendship center that'll have various services that are not just housing, but also provide cultural and language supports, wraparound supports, if you will. So I guess it depends on the time, it depends on the city, it depends on if there's a friendship center there, it depends on how many units they have in the Ontario Aboriginal Housing Program. So it depends.
I guess it's my turn now. I don't think it does anyone a service when we divide each other into as many small groups as we possibly can and talk about how much we can, how much we've bothered each other, how much we've done to each other. Fair enough. When you divide into a lot of groups, all the groups have to be small, I guess. I consider myself, I suppose, from a fairly small group of immigrants from Central and Eastern Europe, and I just don't see it as productive to highlight how we're different. I'd like to see it emphasized how we're the same, how we can all participate in the place we live in on equal terms. I wish I had more time.
Hello? All right. Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, the GPO official platform book has just come out today. It does have a section specifically about this topic. And the reason it has that under its Truth and Reconciliation kind of header is because historically there are statistically worse outcomes and a more difficult situation for people who are Indigenous. And so one of those negative outcomes is an increased rate of being unhoused. And so we would offer a lot of the same supports that I've been discussing earlier, but we do it in a collaborative way where we communicate with community elders, community leaders, and always be listening and learning so that we can do something that works best for the community that we're trying to serve.
So our second question is going to come from number... Okay. Go ahead.
Hi. I was just wondering for each of the candidates, when was the last time that you spoke with someone who is experiencing homelessness about the housing crisis? And if it hasn't been recently, especially in leading up to in preparing for this evening's event, what's your plan to remedy that moving forward?
Thank you.
Could you
Somebody
repeat it, please?
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. My question's for everybody. I was wondering when the last time it was that you spoke with somebody who was experiencing homelessness about the housing crisis. And if it hasn't been recently, as in leading up to this event, what is your plan to remedy that moving forward? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, good question. If I'm being perfectly honest, it's been months since I've spoke to someone who is experiencing homelessness. I haven't spoken to someone leading up to this debate since that time. What I would say, though, is that I've grown up on a reserve. Many of those around me, many of my loved ones have experienced homelessness. Some of them have not lived past it. I have a very good understanding of what got them there, at least in this particular instance, intergenerational trauma, not inconsistent support, even living in a city. But thank you for calling us to task and asking if we've done that work. My experience probably is a little outdated, so thank you for that. We need to be talking to folks that are in this community that are experiencing homelessness now and here. So miigwech.
Hello. Yeah, so the last time was about, let's say, 5 days ago, I suppose, while I was out canvassing, going door to door, talking to people who live in houses. It kind of occurred to me that that's not a great practice, because I was walking past someone who, they were like not doing anything, but in the same way that I knock on the doors and I try to get the attention of the homeowner, I just struck up a little conversation. But I will say that it's not something that I've done often enough, and it was enlightening. There was a lot of apathy and feelings of disenfranchisement and hopelessness, and I imagine that is consistent among a large group of our homeless here, and I need to get more of their perspectives. Thank you.
Is that working? Okay, are we on again? It's hard to tell up here. You guys can hear everything great, I hope, but it's very echoey and weird back here. To be honest, did I stand up at the wrong time? Jen, that's supposed to be you. I'm sorry. Goodness. I don't know. The short answer is I don't know when the last time I spoke to someone who was homeless. I speak to people a lot, just sort of everywhere I go. I like to talk to whoever. I don't ask them if they are homeless, so I don't know. The next thing I could say is, well, I've never spoken to anyone who looks homeless, but I think it's quite obvious that there is no one look for homeless people. So I honestly don't know. I would have to assume within the last year, because of just how many people I talk to when I'm sort of going about my business, and I don't hold back. I like to talk to people when I run into them, so that's my answer. It's not a great answer, but it is a really good question, so thanks for asking it.
I have two friends who live in the Wolf Street encampment. One of them is a student that I taught maybe 10 years ago and reconnected with when I was campaigning 2 years ago. She and the other person I'm going to mention were homeless, living on the streets. Now they have found, they are in the Wolf Street encampment, so that's an upgrade. So these two friends of mine, I really connected with them 2 years ago and have remained in touch. And I saw them both yesterday or the day before, I'm losing track of time, and one of them came to my nomination meeting. So I have continued to keep the connection with those two friends, and they are a very important part of how I have conceptualized the challenges that the unhoused community face.
All right, thank you. So the second online question is to all the candidates. What housing initiatives do you support in Peterborough, if any, and why? And the order on that is Jen, Lucas, Andrew, and Adam.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yep. What housing initiatives do you support in Peterborough, if any, and why? I think they'd be talking
not-
about shelters,
I'm not sure I completely
assisted
understand
housing.
the question, but I'll
yeah.
take a stab at it. Any housing. Housing that is safe, that is affordable, that people want to live in. I think that when we talk about, I mentioned my friend, I didn't get permission to say their names, so I won't say their names, but I think about one of my friends who lives in the Wolf Street encampment, and the type of housing, it's the safety that's, and there's still not enough safety in the Wolf Street encampment. So when I think about housing, I want people to have a place that they can go into and feel like they are safe.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, and thank you for it. I think it's going to be a shorter list to kind of talk about the housing initiatives that I don't support, because as Jen said, any housing is good housing. It's all contributing to easing the crisis that we're in, but there are certainly less efficient ways to do that. That would be, luxury apartments. That would be sprawling endlessly into suburbia when I think that intensification and working within the city limits and not extending and overextending our utilities out into the middle of nowhere, I think those are meant to look like productive uses of our time and our money towards housing, and I think that there are many more efficient uses of our time and money.
I guess I differ a little bit in the sense that I was just going to answer it generically, but Lucas just brought up suburban sprawl. And I have to admit, suburban sprawl is a little bit boring. I won't deny that. I live in suburban sprawl, and it's a bit bland. But I'm not necessarily against it, because people will move out of smaller places, more affordable places, if they can afford to live in, say, something bigger in a suburban sprawl. That still clears up more affordable, say, smaller or more accessible places that people would perhaps otherwise get out of to go into suburbia. So obviously I'm not advocating to simply build a suburbia and push everybody there, but the more places there are for people to live, I think definitely the lower the price is going to be. And so in general, that would be something that I support.
Oh, it just got turned off.
Safe and affordable is what I support.
It just got turned off. There.
Testing.
Okay, so now we're going to go to our next question from the audience. You're good, thanks. Come on up.
Hi, folks. Thanks, Jackie, for letting me have your question today. I work and play in the city of Peterborough, but I grew up and live in the county. Many of your parties and many of what you've said has talked about building affordable housing, which I think is fantastic. I think it's needed. But I am wondering, how does your party plan to balance this growth with protecting prime agricultural land in Ontario and in Peterborough County as well? Thank you.
And so the order for this one is Andrew, Adam, Jen, and Lucas.
I think if we see the problem of housing people as serious enough, which I think everybody in this room does, I don't think it's a bad idea to to balance an environmental concern with new developments. I think that's generally good. Particularly in Peterborough, which is still a town that you can be in the middle of Peterborough and then out in the middle of nowhere in 20 minutes. It's a really nice feature of Peterborough, actually. It's kind of one of the reasons I moved here. I think we have quite a lot of room, and I think for the benefit of the people who need places to live, we should be using it. And I know that there are environmental considerations, but I think we really need to look at how we balance that with developing new places for people to live.
This one works again.
So I think I think the homeowner, the landowners, the farmers whose livelihood is based on that land need to be consulted as part of that particular municipality. So they need to be involved in those discussions as to whether or not that land is going to be used or repurposed. I think the second component would be most of this territory, Williams Treaty territory, if there's going to be rezoning issues, the Indigenous people of the territory need to be consulted, fully consulted, as to any changes in zoning. So that's my answer. Thank you.
I'm sure we need to look at housing outside of city centers, but my head keeps going back to when we're talking about supportive housing, we're also talking about access to services, and so then we're talking about density. Density, density, density. We can do density. We can do density well. We can make beautiful homes that can house people that are still maintain a small footprint, and I think we can. I think we can absolutely prioritize environmental impact while also addressing housing concerns.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. I'm actually really glad you asked it because it allows me to continue a little bit of my thoughts from the last one. Yeah, I'm going to say density a few more times as well. Intensification is really just, building more dense, making more efficient use of the land that we've already got zoned that is oftentimes taken up by, like parking spots and parking minimums, which are not financially efficient, and they are not good for the environment either. So I'll just reiterate, I don't believe in sprawling suburbs because those are the things that eat up farmland because everyone needs their single family dwelling with their large yard, or they don't need it, that's what they are sold on. But the truth is you need to be in close proximity to services, you need to be in close proximity to grocery stores. So intensification, density, density.
We're going to get another online question. It's a long one. Okay. So the question is, the current government wants to reduce access to harm reduction services in favor of treatment-only models. What are your beliefs about harm reduction? I'll read it again. The current government wants to reduce access to harm reduction services in favor of treatment-only models. What are your beliefs about harm reduction? And the order will be first Lucas, Adam, Andrew, and Jen.
Great question. I have a question of my own. Would you play a guitar with one string? You could probably do a decent job at it, but you're not getting the full picture. You don't have the full range of sound. And I think it's the exact same with focusing in on treatment-only models without harm reduction. So harm reduction keeps people alive. Safe injection sites keep people alive. Dead people do not recover from their addictions. So I think we need a comprehensive approach. We need to have supports for people at all steps of their addiction journey and their journey to recovery. And just focusing on one support at the cost of the others is not a good solution.
Oh, okay. Okay. So essentially, do we support access to harm reduction? Okay, well, of course. It saves lives. It saves lives probably every day, not necessarily in the city here, but across the province, it's saving lives. It's one, I'm probably reiterating exactly what you said. I wasn't listening too closely because I couldn't hear, but yeah, it's one component of the system to assist folks who are experiencing addiction. It's one component of a broken healthcare system. Sorry, it's something that's part of something that's happened because our healthcare system is broken. So I'll close it off. Yes, of course, I support harm reduction services.
People who care about these issues, who not just who say they care, anybody can say that, yes, I care about people getting treatment for addiction, but the people who dedicate their work and their lives to it need to be more empowered to do it without having to wait for resources to come that never come. They need to have the power in their own hands, because they're going to be the ones who are good at providing the service. I wish I had more than 30 seconds, but I've spoken to more than one person who works in the healthcare industry, and most of us differ in politics. But the one thing I hear from them the most is that they'd like to be free to pursue the avenue of healthcare that they really feel passionate about, and they don't feel like they are in the current system, because government's the only game in town, and we are not empowered to do the things that we could otherwise be good at.
I hope I understand the question, and I think I maybe don't, so apologies if I take this in a weird direction. I think the question is treatment only preferable to a harm reduction model? Am I understanding that right?
The current government wants to reduce access to harm reduction services in favor of treatment-only models.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So, well, that's crazy. Harm reduction is prevention. Treatment is after harm has occurred. So obviously we need both. We need to actually focus on harm reduction, because once people are harmed, it is harder to make them whole.
Thank you. So now we are going to get another question from the group. Number 3957662.
Hello. I was wondering what key concepts of your ideology separate you from your other panelists, and why do you think that's the best way forward? Your other panelists.
I'm obviously not very good at reading the board. You guys hear me? It's kind of hit and miss, isn't it? Obviously, I differ a lot with the other candidates in the approach. Sounds to me like we have the same goals, and we care about the same things. Our methodology is obviously very different. I believe in empowering, creating a situation where people who are truly talented at at what we're talking about today have the resources to pursue that talent and to make the most of it. And I don't think the current system, the way we're running it, is giving that opportunity to people. And I think it's a terrible waste of really great human capital that we have in Ontario that we're doing it this way. I think that's probably how I would differ from the rest of the candidates up here.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, I think that there's a couple areas with varying degrees of closeness where we differ. In terms of the New Blue, it sounds like we have fairly different approaches to certain issues. So again, we're going towards the same goals by the sound of it, but we're taking very different paths. The Liberal side, we sounds like we're taking the same path, but with varying degrees of strength, I guess. Like we're pushing a little bit harder on some of the numbers, on some of the things. We have similar concepts going that we are proposing, but our numbers, at least in the platform that we've produced, are a little bit farther. With the NDP, it's a little more subtle, but I think that what sets us apart is the environment is a part of the NDP platform, whereas it's our core, and that is what all of the social and economic stuff is built on.
Oh, it's me. Darn. Tough question. I met these guys this afternoon, and Andrew, I haven't actually met you yet, but I saw you for the first time 10 minutes before this debate. So I don't feel qualified to categorize our relationships. I would suspect that between me and these first two fellows, our Venn diagrams probably overlap a fair bit, and it sounds like that probably we've got pretty different ideas. I think that really it's the parties that are the difference, and the values of the parties that we stand with. So I don't want to judge these guys until I've had a better chance to meet them, but I do have strong feelings about the difference between Libs, NDP, and Greens, and I think that the NDP is the way to go.
So I think I would agree with much of what you said, Jen. I would, I guess I would talk a little bit about my approach and how I frame the work that I'd like to do as an aspiring politician. What I think about is my responsibilities as a human being and the relationality that I need to have to the earth, to my loved ones, to those that live here, and to those yet to be born. That's what has always grounded me as a human being, that relationality and those responsibilities. That'll guide my work as an aspiring Liberal politician, and always has, and will continue to do so. So, thank you.
Okay, and now we'll have our fourth online question to all the candidates. How do you see homelessness? Do you think that stereotypes and stigmas about unhoused people are justified? Why or why not? And the order will be Adam, Jen, Lucas, and Andrew. Sure. How do you see homelessness? Do you think that stereotypes and stigmas about unhoused people are justified? Why or why not?
I'm really sorry. That was me that smashed the mic. Could you read it one more time?
Sure.
I'm so sorry, Jim.
How do you see homelessness? Do you think that stereotypes and stigmas about unhoused people are justified? Why or why not?
Are they justified? The stigmas that people have about people they see on the street? No, of course not. I don't think anyone on the stage believes that. You know, I do think we have some responsibility as members of this community to remember that these are human beings that started out in one place, ended up in another. Some of them, should they seek it, are looking to become more whole human beings and are out there accessing services, whether it be to you know, to ensure that their own wellness is taken care of or to find safe and appropriate housing. But these are human beings just like the rest of us. And so, no, I mean, that's nuts. So, yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think there's a natural and human reaction to react to something that is very different from your experience. I've had the opportunity to sit down and have pretty long conversations with a number of homeless people in Peterborough. And I don't think I would be friends with some of them. They're people too, right? I'm not friends with there's people I'm not friends with. But I've also met a lot of people who have, well, actually, even the ones that probably wouldn't be my friends, like they've got incredibly complicated and touching and amazing stories. I've spoken to people that were in bands and people who had amazing businesses, and then stuff went bad. And I think when I interact with somebody who is homeless, I think this person didn't dream of this life when they were a child. And maybe when I'm meeting them and they're doing something strange, maybe that's actually the worst day in their life. And they don't have the privacy to have that worst day of their life out of sight. And so that's the compassion that I try to bring when I'm interacting with the folks that I meet who are homeless.
I think that well, first of all, I'll preempt by saying that no, I don't agree with any of the stigmas or the stereotypes. And I think the reason for that is because I know that anyone could become homeless. It's not some feature of someone's being. It's just something that has happened to them. And I think that because we live in such an individualistic society, it's scary to confront that or acknowledge to ourselves that anyone can become homeless, because that means that we have to acknowledge that we could become homeless as well. And so, no, I think that's why people put up barriers and create stigmas and create mental blocks for themselves, because they've got a measure of cognitive dissonance. They don't want to acknowledge that they might become homeless just through a poor twist of luck. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can give a better answer than Jen just gave, so I'm just going to add only that you want to live in a society where people can change their circumstances. You want them to be free enough so that they can have some control over their life, even when it doesn't go well, even when they find themselves in a difficult spot. Of course, I mean, I can't imagine anybody would answer yes to that question. But I guess what makes us maybe think is how do we create a situation and a circumstance where no one has to deal with something like that. No one has to deal with being stigmatized for being homeless. Still not as good an answer as Jen's, but I gave it my best shot.
Thank you. Now, in light of time, we are just going to ask you to do your final reflection. So you each have
Wait,
two.
just a sec, Joelle. We have one more question from the floor.
But because of the time,
you're thinking we won't do that?
That's right. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So sorry. So what we want is for each one of you to have 2 minutes to sum up your reflection. And we're going to start with Andrew, and then we'll go to Adam, Jen, and Lucas.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you all for having me here tonight, and the rest of the candidates for hearing me out. I know that perhaps most of us differ in the way we think about this issue and probably other ones, but I think it's worth hearing everybody out, and I'm glad I was able to come and participate. I really appreciate that. Whatever that question was that didn't get answered, ask me after. I'm going to hang around and I want to answer it, whatever it was. Obviously, I'd like to see an Ontario where the homelessness problem is really, really small. I'd like to see an Ontario where the addiction problem is really, really small. I'd like to see an Ontario where all of these social problems are when you discuss them, people go, what are you talking about, 10 cities? That's what I'd like to see. And the way I think you build it is you give power and resources to begin with to the people who earned them so that they can build the businesses, the houses, and everything it takes to create that kind of society. I think we probably all envision roughly the same thing. We have a very different way to get there, and if you'd like to talk to me a little bit more in depth about why I think the way I do, I'd be more than happy to do it either right here afterwards or online by email. Just let me know and we can talk about it some more. Thank you again for having me.
So miigwech for being here and for taking the time to listen to us. This is most of our second debate today. This has been an intense day, holy man. For a couple of us, three of us, I guess, it's our first go at being on a stage in front of folks trying to, in a meaningful way and an articulate way, talk about our party's platform. And it's not without its challenges. But what I've been reflecting on tonight is that this is clearly a room full of folks who care about the community. Many of you are city councilors, service providers, and otherwise leaders in this community. And I know you're here because you really want to elect a government that is going to do good on you, good on the people that you work with, your loved ones, and those that are yet to come. So thank you for being here and being a part of this very important process. I guess I'll just end by saying we've got a couple of more weeks left here. We've got a lot of people that we still need to talk to. This election was called, and Dave's not here. I wish he was here to kind of take a little bit of the brunt of it, but there's a reason he's not here. This government has decided to take an opportunity to put us all on the back of our feet and try and steal another 4 years for this particular government. So whatever happens on election day and in advance polls, I appreciate all of you for being here, being a part of the process, and making sure that we elect a qualified government that'll move us past the past 8-9 years of really destruction of our publicly assisted healthcare and education system. So I'll stop there. Miigwech.
I'm going to start by mentioning that I've just been cold for the last 2 weeks because I've been out canvassing 5 or 6 hours a day and it's really cold. And that's making me think really hard about how cold it is. And it's a bad storm out there, and there's about 300 people that are sleeping rough tonight in this really cold. I'm going to whinge going from that door to my vehicle. I'm going to be cold and I'm going to grumble, and there are people that are going to spend the whole night outside in this cold, cold weather. So that's the first thing I'm thinking about. The other thing I'm thinking about is Dave Smith didn't come today because he said he doesn't come to debates that are single issue debates. And I don't think this is a single issue debate, frankly, and even if it was, I don't think that's relevant. But this is not a single issue debate. This is about how we can, do we consider ourselves a caring and compassionate people? And I truly believe that the vast majority of people are caring and generous and compassionate, but it is very hard to extend that kind of compassion when you yourself feel like your basic needs are not being met. And right now we are in a position where we've had years of cuts, and everyone who is in caring professions are feeling overwhelmed. People who are relying on caring professions are feeling like they're not getting enough. And it's a tough time that we're going through. And I truly believe that there is a path through this, that we can get to a place where we can understand and acknowledge the skills and the qualities of people around us, and treat everyone like a human being that deserves dignity and compassion. And we can start here, and I am here tonight because this is not a single issue for me. I think this is a core issue, but it's not a single issue.
Right. So, tonight we have talked about a lot of the challenges facing Ontario, facing Peterborough: housing, healthcare in some aspects, affordability and the rising cost of living. But this election isn't just about the problems, it's about who has the courage to take real action to fix them. For too long, we've watched governments make promises and break them. We've seen housing prices soar, while corporate landlords buy up homes and rents skyrocket beyond what people can afford. We've seen growing encampments in Peterborough, while politicians respond with police crackdowns instead of permanent housing solutions. We've seen emergency rooms overwhelmed while governments cut services instead of investing in them. And every election we're told to pick between the same parties and hope that this time things will be different. But hope isn't a strategy, and we need action. If you always vote for the same parties, you'll always get the same results. The Green Party has real solutions: building the houses we need, homes we need, putting an end to housing speculation, ensuring health care is fully funded and accessible, and making life more affordable, not by handing tax breaks to the wealthy, but by investing in people, real people. A vote for change is never wasted. A vote for the same broken system is. Some will say this kind of change isn't possible, but I believe it is. And more importantly, I know that some of the people here, the people in Peterborough, Kawartha, you believe that it's possible as well. We've seen what happens when we come together as a community, as a province, as a country, and when we demand better, we make it happen. So this election is a choice for you. Do we accept more of the same, or do we fight for something better? If you're ready for bold leadership that puts people first, I invite you to join us, and together we can build a future where every person has a safe, affordable place to call home.
Thank you, everyone. That brings us to an end, and on my clock, we rolled from 8:59 to 9 o'clock, 2 seconds after Adam finished, so congratulations to everyone. I think it's been a really informative, respectful 2 hours, and that's everything you can ask from an event like this. I think the format worked really well in that you heard a lot of policy and platform in the first section, and you got to know a lot more about what these people think on their own and who they are in the second section. Keep that in mind. Election Day, February 27th. Make sure you get out and vote. If you are experiencing homelessness, you can vote. Remember that. Talk to the staff at the shelter you're at, place you're staying, staff at Trinity Drop-In Center. If anyone would like to stay and help clean up, that'd be great. Can't tell in here if it's snowing yet, but if you're driving, be careful, be safe, and have a good evening. Good night.
Great job. Great job. You killed it. No. I was like, I could see how it got mixed up, but yeah. Hey, buddy, how you doing? You doing okay? No. You getting your question in? Oh. you got something to tell him. I know you do. I know. Yeah, I'm just gonna pretend.